guys, welcome back to Too Cool for Middle School. I have this whole list of videos that I need to make that are a little more like content-based and stuff, but look at how many books I have right now. I don't know what it is about like fall and back to school time. I think I was just in college for so many years in a row that I just am in the habit of spending like $1,200 on books every fall. There are more books that I've purchased recently also. I just couldn't find all of them, but these are a few that I wanted to talk about today. I've basically separated them into 4 categories. Some are just like novels that I want to read just for my own enjoyment. Some are books specifically that I thought like these would be good in my classroom. Some are more spiritual books that I bought for myself, for my own spiritual edification, and then a couple of them are specifically by Native American writers so that I can share them with my class. We did a unit where we read a few Native American writers and we just wanted to expand from what was in our textbook. And I do just read a lot. I got into the habit of reading a book a week in grad school because I had to, and I don't keep up with quite that level anymore, but pretty close. It's October now and I think I've read 28 books so far this year, so maybe like every other week or so I read a book. Okay, so let's get into the pile. This is the first one I wanted to share with you. This is called Ahimsa by Supriya Kelkar. And I've read some of this. I wanted to finish it. Maybe I'll finish it today before I put it on my bookshelf just because it looks so interesting. It's 1942 in India, and this girl lives during the time when Gandhi is launching like a nonviolent revolution against the British Empire, and I just never read anything from this perspective and like set in this time and place. So I thought this was really cool. And we have a lot of students at our school who are Indian, so I just thought this would be interesting to them and then to any other students who want to understand that history. This one comes so highly recommended by every English teacher on Instagram. I know it's a great one. We've been reading a lot about refugees in our curriculum and then even just on like Newsela, and really tying that into some of the stories that we've read in the collections curriculum. So this book takes 3 different perspectives. One is Joseph, a Jewish boy living in 1930s Nazi Germany. Isabel is a Cuban girl in 1994, and then Mahmoud is a Syrian boy in 2015. I already know I love it. I just need to read through it really quick and then put it on my shelf for my students. The next category is the books for myself that are more like spiritual in nature. So this one is called I'm Still Here, Black Dignity in a World Made for Whiteness by Austin Channing Brown. It's a fairly short one, but I have heard it recommended by a lot of people who I follow and respect, and I'm really looking forward to the perspective in this book. This next book is written by one of our pastors. We kind of go to 2 different churches right now because there's one that's really close to where we live, but then one that we've gone to for a long time. So just depending on like our schedule that day, we can either spend the time to go far or just go nearby. So Erwin McManus is the pastor of the closer church that we go to, and this one is called Chasing Daylight, Seize the Power of Every Moment. In this book, Erwin McManus reveals a direct relationship between passion and initiative. We're doing a study on this book at our church right now, so a lot of people are reading it, so I need to jump in. Actually, I haven't read any of it yet. This book I'm so excited to read. This is Raise Your Voice, Why We Stay Silent and How to Speak Up by Kathy Kang. I saw Kathy speak at the Justice Conference last weekend, and she is hilarious. She's like my new favorite person. She's an activist, she's a Christian woman, and she is just so funny, so relatable. I can't wait to see how she put some of her stories into this book because her stories were so funny, and I was just so happy to support her in purchasing her book. This is another one that was suggested at the Justice Conference by Inez McBride, who is an amazing preacher, by the way. If you ever get a chance to hear her, you should. This one is called From a Liminal Place in Asian American Theology by Song Hyun Lee. He's a Princeton theologian, and she was just talking about how much this book impacted her views on just the stories of Jesus in the Bible and people who are outsiders, because that is really the theme of the entire Bible. It's people who are on the outside of power. So this is another fairly short one, but I have a feeling it's pretty dense. So really looking forward to digging into that one. This is one that I have already started. It's called Still Evangelical: Insiders Reconsider Political, Social, and Theological Meaning. and it's edited by Mark Laberton, but it has a bunch of essays written by different evangelicals or like writers and leaders in the Christian community. So far, I love it. I thought the introduction was really interesting, and it kind of laid out the history of the evangelical movement and how really a lot of what we say when we mean evangelical is really more like fundamentalist. So that part was really interesting. And then I also read this essay by Lisa Sharon Harper, Will Evangelicalism Surrender? And I thought this was so well written and such an important question that really gets at the heart at, I think, what is the problem in a lot of churches right now, and the refusal to surrender and the refusal to admit any wrongdoing. So I want to go back to this chapter and kind of dig through it a little bit more. And then I read one more chapter called Why I'm an Evangelical by Karen Swallow Prior. And her ideas are good, but she's a really, really poor writer. I'm sorry to say, but this introduction is horrible. Like if you were like a high school English teacher and somebody gave you this introduction, you'd be like, oh, stop repeating yourself. The whole first paragraph is unnecessary. It's like really bad. And she has a PhD in literature, so I don't know what's happening there. But yeah, if you read like Lisa Sharon Harper's essay, the writing is infinitely better. But anyway, the content of it is really interesting and a question that I'm grappling with as well. So I like that one. Moving on to things that I just want to read for my own enjoyment, and this is the kind of stuff that I enjoy. This one is Barracoon by Zora Neale Hurston, and this, it's not really a novel, it's more of like a historical book. Zora Neale Hurston interviewed a man who was 86 years old, and this was back in 1927, and he has firsthand experience of being on a slave ship. And so I just can't imagine the kind of stories that he has to tell in this book. I think this one might move to the front of the list because I really, really would like to read it and just know what he has to say. Oh, and then this beautiful picture on the back of Zora Neale Hurston. And it was a gift from one of my friends, Jess. So thank you, Jess, for this book. This is another like historical monograph, the type of thing that I just like to read on my own time. And I've actually read this book before. This one's pretty dang long, but I read this in grad school. This is called The Great Arizona Orphan Abduction by Linda Gordon. I wanted to pull out some of it and like use it in my English classes. Jensen, hush please. As we were talking about like race and identity. So there's this group of orphans who are Irish, and they start off in New York, and they're Catholic, and so in New York they're not seen as white because they are Irish Catholic, and so they put them on this train and send them to Arizona because there's this group of Mexican Catholics who has offered to adopt them. So they get to Arizona and the people realize that Mexicans want to adopt them, and then all of a sudden they decide, oh no, these kids are white, they can't be adopted by Mexicans. So in one train ride, these kids go from being not white to being white. So it's a really interesting exploration of identity as far as religion and where that intersects with race and who should be able to like adopt certain kids. And this is a true story, and I went to the Supreme Court, and I just want to go back through it again and like pull out some sections that maybe my kids could read. I keep seeing this one advertised and recommended everywhere. It's called Vox by Christina Dalcher. It's kind of a futuristic, like apocalyptic story, it seems like, and women are not permitted to hold jobs, girls are not taught to read or write, females no longer have a voice. Before, the average person spoke 16,000 words each day. Now women have only 100 to make themselves heard. We don't have Hulu, so I haven't seen the series of The Handmaid's Tale. I need to borrow somebody's password. Can I borrow your password, anybody out there? But I have a feeling that if you like The Handmaid's Tale, you would like this book. So it's just like, for fun type of book. Another one that's just for fun, this is Rich People Problems by Kevin Kwan, and this is the third in the series of the Crazy Rich Asians books. So I read the first two. I really liked the first one. The second one got a little bit like gratuitous for me. Like, it seemed like there wasn't much of a plot. It was just like the book was a vehicle for describing a bunch of things that rich people buy. I didn't love it, so I wasn't gonna read the third one, but then people told me that this one gets more into like the history of Nick's grandfather and his grandmother and like what they did during the war, and that's all I've ever wanted to know from the story anyway. So I hope that's true because I got this one and now I'm excited to find out what happened. Now this one is another novel that I just wanted to read for myself, but this is kind of a transition into books by Indigenous authors. This one I did already finish. This is by Tommy Orange. This is one of the best crafted novels I've ever read in my life. Each chapter takes the perspective of a different character. They each have their own very unique voice. All of their stories seem separate at the beginning and they just begin to intertwine, and in the end they all come together, and the ending is so intense. I'm not going to spoil anything about it for you, but this is such a powerful book. I would recommend it to anybody, especially if you are interested in reading about like urban Indigenous stories. This book is set in Oakland, mostly during the present day. So Tommy Orange is an amazingly gifted writer, and I want to read this one again because it was so good, and because I want to like go back and see if I can pick up the threads earlier the second time, because it's a little bit disorienting the first time you read it, but it does all come together. So if you've started it and you're kind of wondering where it's going, keep reading. This one I have not read. This is by Tim Tingle, How I Became a Ghost, a Choctaw Trail of Tears story. Oh, it's the beginning of a trilogy. So this is a shorter one. It's written at like a lower reading level, so my 6th graders or any of my students that have a little bit lower reading level could read this. I feel like I need to get a few more on my shelf that are within reach of some of those kids that struggle to find a good book to read. And this one came highly recommended by you guys on Instagram, so I'll be adding this one to my shelf. This one is by Rebecca Roanhorse. It's called Trail of Lightning, and I believe it's part of a series as well, the 6th World series. And this isn't typically the type of book that I read, but like here's the premise. While most of the world has drowned beneath the sudden rising waters of climate apocalypse, Dinata, formerly the Navajo reservation, has been reborn. The gods and heroes of legend walk the land, but so do monsters. This is just such a cool idea for a book, and I know that I have students that would love to dive into this. Someone did warn me that it's a little bit more like adult rather than YA, so I'm gonna read through some of it and just check it out, but it just sounds so fascinating, and I can tell it's written at a pretty high level, but that just sounds like such an interesting, cool story. And then lastly, I ordered this one. It's called Hashtag Not Your Princess, Voices of Native American Women. Oh wow, I hadn't really flipped through it much. Oh, this is so cool. I think my students are really going to enjoy this. It has some beautiful images inside. Oh wow, this is so cool. Oh, I didn't realize this was so amazing. Oh my gosh. Okay, so it's some like poems and some short stories. Oh my gosh, I love this. What interesting pictures too. What interesting photographs. Talking about social media and its influence on tribes. Wow, okay, this is just really cool. So I'll definitely be sharing this with my students Monday. And we do go to school on Monday because in LA County we do not recognize Columbus Day as a holiday anymore, but instead it's Indigenous Peoples Day. We don't get the day off, but we do recognize that holiday, so that's something that I'm really proud of LA for. So I think this would be a really cool resource to use on Monday just to kind of acknowledge the holiday. So anyway, I have this huge stack here. Let me know if you had this stack of books, which one would you read first? Because I'm torn. I don't know which one I should read first, so let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I love doing book talks with you, and I love hearing your suggestions because then I buy them all. Go have a cup of tea, read a book for a few minutes, just allow yourself to get immersed into a different world. Have a great day, guys. Bye.